Not yet. Play today, huh?
That would be great.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to get you to your line. They are an Omaha caliber team. What are your thoughts on Arkansas?
Yeah, great team, great program. If you look back, maybe over the last 10 years, probably the most consistent team, and I have a lot of respect for that. This year, no different. Great roster, playing well right now.
What have you seen? Obviously we've all been talking about the offense, right? So, what have you seen there? Is it just guys getting outside of their plan? Is it some mechanical things late in the season?
Well, I think there's a few things to it. I think number one, the nature of baseball, and this will be the third consecutive week we were playing a team that's been ranked number one in the country, and you don't get there without really good pitching staffs. And I think we've seen a lot of that. I think that there's been an elevation in talent in college baseball, where you're seeing more high-end guys. For instance, Ryan Prager turned down $1 million in the draft last year as a third-round pick and came back to Texas A&M, and in the game against us, he threw really well. Prior to that, it's Tennessee, and Doyle's going to get like $6 million, and Marcus Phillips that night was great, and that's kind of honestly just a part of the schedule that we're in right now, and so that's probably a bigger factor than anybody would point to. Now, with that being said, the competitive nature of our team, of our program, of me as a coach, we're constantly pushing to be better in a couple ways. I think, through April 10, we were number 3 in the country in hitting, and, we were number 1 in swing decisions, like the best strike zone discipline team in the entire country. And when you face some of this pitching that we have, it makes that a little bit more challenging, where you don't quite impact the ball as much against them, and you don't get as many free bases against them. So we have to tighten the focus and tighten the execution of managing the zone the way that our teams do. And so I think it's partly opponent. I think it's partly that, and then the nature of baseball is hard anyways. And so if you get caught up in the past couple of bats or a past weekend, and you're facing really good competition, you're making success or execution almost impossible. And to the credit to the players, they're continuing to work incredibly hard. We had a great day yesterday, completely flipped the practice format on its head. The weather kind of dictated that a little bit too, but it was a really good day. And you're getting challenged this weekend. I mean, the guy we're facing tomorrow night, looked like Steve Carlton last week. So, we have to be on top of it, or it's the good news is once you kind of get through this, there's nothing when you go to postseason play we will have not seen. There's nothing we will have not seen. And when you put it in the context of offensive performance for an entire season and across the country, I still feel very good about what we have.
Left-handed pitching has given you guys some troubles, particularly in conference play. How do you sort of attack that, and where would you say that's given you guys some problems?
Keep working. I think when you look at it, my reference point would be winning games and looking at the record, against those guys. Again, I think part of it is, and it's the nature of it, anybody, if you're playing in the SEC, you're just facing the best guys. And, I think most of it has to do with staying committed to our plan and, persevering through some of the difficulties. When you go for 2, the great hitter wants the third at bat and has enough self-belief in themselves to not get off of what they're doing because they start chasing hits. And does that happen all the time? No, it doesn't. It's very natural. Guys playing on TV that get paid a lot of money have gone through, a stretch maybe one of our players have gone through, and get outside of themselves when they really want the result. And you just can't do that because a really good pitcher, like those guys from Tennessee, A&M, Alabama, Zane Adams is pretty good. Somebody's going to pay him a lot of money. Riley Quick throws 100. So, you're probably looking at $35 million worth of signing bonuses in the guys that we've seen over the past month. And so, it's just part of it. It's just part of it. And I like how we do what we do, and I like the guys on our team, and they have to keep competing. They have. Again, you're split down the middle of the last 2 weeks against two teams that have been ranked number one, and we just got to keep grinding through it.
Do you think that affected you guys at all against A&M? They had 7 pitchers, 5 that were lefties. Do you think that played a factor at all? Lampkin and Prager have thrown more innings in the SEC probably than any duo in the conference, and so they've been tested, including against us. I think we've won games with both of them starting. Actually, yeah, we won. We were 3-0 against those guys starting prior to this year, and we did win the game that Lampkin faced, or that we faced Lampkin. Prager got us. They're just it's just good. They're good. That's why they're so valuable. That's why Cade Anderson, somebody's going to give him $6 million because if they can go 4 pitches and pitch on both sides of the plate and be really unpredictable, and they get guys in between, and on the road makes it tougher. There's no question about that. So they're good. They'll be in the postseason, and it wouldn't surprise me if we played them again.
Don't most teams, even the good ones, have trouble?
Yeah, like I said, I think there's. I'll frame how I look at this whole thing is like, we just need to be a little bit better. That's it. We need to have a few more good at-bats to score 5 or 6, and then this team can be as successful as we all want it to be. And so that's where we're putting our focus into. But yes, I learned this from Augie Garrido. The best teams, always have left-handed hitting and left-handed pitching. Left-handed pitching neutralizes the teams that have the best left-handed hitting, and those teams beat most college teams that rely on right-handed pitching. And so it's definitely part of the formula, and they're really hard to find and get to school. We've had some really good ones signed, Robbie Snelling, Boston Bateman, that would be here right now that teams are paying a lot of money to because of that dynamic. And, we're fortunate to have, in my opinion, the best guy in Kate. And Arkansas has 2 good ones. Tennessee has a really good one. A&M has 3 good ones. So, yeah, no question.
Yeah, we kind of get caught up in the offense, but can you talk about the job that your 2 starting pitchers are doing?
Yeah, I think they're great. When I came here, it was evident what we needed. We really needed to elevate our quality of starting pitching at LSU to match up. And I think we've done a great job of that. It's one of the things that I'm the most proud of, is when you look at, still don't know how we did it in 22 with McHale, and Ty came on late in the year. But then Paul and Ty, Luke and Gage, and then now Cade and Anthony. That's pretty good. That's what you hope for. It's one of the reasons I wanted to come here, is because you could recruit pitchers like that at LSU, and we've been able to do that. In terms of those guys, the makeup is the separator. In terms of Anthony, last week, that's one of the best games I've ever had a pitcher throw, ever. Like I said, there was no chance I was taking him out. I think he's continued to get better as the season has gone along. Cade, we've talked a lot about him, and rightfully so. Like, he's just way more physical, stronger, the pitch mix, and much like some of the guys that have made it hard on us, they make it hard on the opponent, because you can't pigeonhole or pin them into one thing, because they have a lot of ways they can attack you.
You talked about how you liked the response from the hitters this week. Just how much of it is mental? Like, how much do you coach the mental side of things when teams or players are going?
A lot, and we don't let up, for good or bad, because of that. Because I believe, I might have even said this last week. Like, never had a great player or a great team that really didn't believe in themselves, and this is the game that challenges you the most in that. because of the nature of it, in hitting, in failure, and at the same time, like, in the last 5 games, we've had one where we scored 12 and scored 15, and all I'm talking about is, how to get better, and that's a high bar, and that's a good thing. And like I said, getting through this phase, and we did last year, and came out the other side of it, and we were in a much better spot than we were, both in terms of how we've played, how we've executed, the position we've put ourselves in, and just need those guys to keep going. And again, it's just a little bit better. We're not talking about going to the moon, and scoring 15 a game. This team doesn't need to do that. When you got those 2 guys throwing the ball the way that they are, and Cowan and Evans and Shore's coming along, and Rizzy coming along, and I like it much better when we pitch well. Like that's what I would say, with the exception of 1 game. This team has been in every game for an entire college baseball season, and that's a credit to how those guys are throwing the ball. It's all mindset. It is this thing is 1,000% what you think it is, in terms of, it's not the thing, the challenge, the struggle, the success. It's how you view the thing, the struggle, the success will probably determine the next steps of it. And it's on, like, every day, man. Like, it's not easy. So we gotta help them as coaches.
Thoughts on where you are now in terms of projecting to be a national team, and what do you have to do?
To play Friday. I mean, if the weather's going to allow us to. I totally understand the question and the nature of it. And, my whole life is built around Omaha. And the best way to get to Omaha is to play at home all the way through it. Our league makes it where if you earn it, you've earned it. But it also makes it really hard to do right now. We have 14. If the season ended today, there's 14 teams from our league playing in the NCAA tournament. I think last year we would get 11, and that was the most of all time. So now we're talking about shattering that record. So there's just no breathing room in terms of, you got these guys or these guys. That's not how this thing goes. So we need to execute Friday against a really good team and a really good pitcher, and when the game's over, turn the focus to Saturday. And it's a really boring answer, and but it's one that I believe in to my core, and they know we want to play here. Our players know we want to play here, and they're on doing everything that they can to make that happen. And then once the SEC tournament is over, you don't have control over that. But I think if you looked at where we are today, we've put ourselves in position to potentially do that. And that's a credit to them. And so you default into what put us in that position. Let's continue to do those things, improve on the things that we need to be better at. So if we do get that opportunity, you're ready to execute when you get it too. And regardless, home or road, there's going to be a really good team sitting there that you get to play. And so I haven't really gone there yet. It's just more about fix the play. You fix the play or improve the play. You improve the result. You improve the result. You improve the opportunities to do really, really cool things like play here in the postseason.
Have you had more conversations, contingency plans and stuff this week about the rain more than other weeks? Because it looked at the forecast is like every day.
It is. We had a meeting a little bit ago with 4 people. Mark Lee, Dan Gaston, Jordan Billingsley, who's our ground guy, and Matt Montgomery, that they're on it. They're on it. So there's my underground weather sources that I always refer to. There's not really a lot of clarity. I listened to them, and it was like, okay, so when are we getting these games in? But hey, man, we've been pretty good at 1 a.m. So, we'll. I don't think the SEC allows you to start after 10 p.m. if I'm not mistaken on that. But
so no discussion yet about moving anything early.
Right now, we're not moving anything yet.
Yeah.
Now, could that change? Probably. but it has not to this. We left that meeting as right now we're as is, and then reconvene later today.
What's the earliest you can start? What do you allow?
I don't know. I probably would say we wouldn't do 10 a.m. I wouldn't do before 10 a.m. if that was ever a scenario. In my small time with you all, Louisiana people tend to be night people, it seems like. So I think that's probably more realistic.
What is is there a cutoff Sunday, like when you can start or play defense?
I think it's before 10 again. Like you have to get it off before 10 p.m. If I'm not mistaken. The ancillary rules I usually leave to our administrators, to try to focus on the baseball, and hopefully that would make everybody that cares about the Tigers happy. But hey, our ability to get all these games in, other than Tuesday to this point, has been phenomenal. With the weather the way that it's been. The good news is it's been good for our team too, because you get into the postseason, and whether it's here or it's Omaha, it tends to happen. And so we'll have been through it with 16 games adjusted due to weather so far this year.
Is that right, 16?
Yeah.
You talk about top line pitching in the conference. I think of the head coaches and just the remarkable consistency.
Yeah.
And Dave certainly one of
Yeah.
them, Tim,
100%.
What has Dave? What do coaches like that have? I guess that enabled them to be at a
Yeah.
high level for so many years.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think when I think about Arkansas, a couple things come to mind. Number one, they recruit better than everybody else in college baseball. Like hands down, explosive players, talent. To me, they're kind of the standard of that in recruiting. No matter who you end up with, you're always going to be in for a battle because they're always going to be able to match up. Number two, and I have a lot of respect for my peers in the league. With him, he's in his own way, he's one of the most competitive coaches that I know, and certainly respect that. I think he's hired really good assistant coaches. They have a really good home environment, and at the end of the day, it comes down to who's on the field, and they always play defense. The pitching staffs, whether it was Hagen Smith, we beat them in Frisco, and they had a guy named Blaine Knight at the time, right-handed pitcher who was really good. And I remember going like, wow, that's a pretty good win right there. We just beat Blaine Knight, Dave Van Horn, Tony Vitello was the third base coach, and Wes Johnson was the pitching coach. Little did I know 7 or 8 years ago, like all of that would be intertwined. But I remember feeling like, man, that's a great win right there. So just a lot of respect for the whole operation. Like to me, like again, they haven't won it the last game, but over 10 years, you'd have a hard time convincing me anybody's been any better than them.
Coach, with the lineup in games 2 and 3 at A&M, some of the changes you made, was that A&M specific, or are you still looking to see something?
Versus Lampkin, it was really specific. So looking at what we did, left-handers have no success against him. 0. So that was part of the nature of it. The catching thing, like Luis has been better because we've spelled him more. And it was hard to take him out those first 4 weeks of the league because he was crushing it. But he's been better because we've been able to spell him a little bit. I think now that we're getting deeper into the season, like our guys have had 4 days off, and now we play, which is great. And then it'll be 3 days off, and then we'll play, and then it'll be a few days off, whatever, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll play, and then your break before the regionals. So that should help him, should help Danny, should help Steven, should help Chris, Derek, those guys we've asked a lot out of that play highly demanding defensive positions and have also been offensive contributors. But that game was, Lampkin, it just destroys left-handers. It's just not a good deal, and so we had to be creative. And then when you looked at that plus where we were at, where was going to be the pocket to score 2 or 3, to set the lineup accordingly. That was very specific to that game. In the third game, which was our better game, Patton was a little different than him. But we want to get going and want to get scoring. And again, it's not just trying to see what will stick. Like, it's trying to score more than the opponent every time. Like, we write that out. Like, I feel like it'd be disrespectful to our players if I stood up here and said I'm just doing something to see if it works or searching. Like, that's not it at all. And that's why you see some of the pinch hitting things. Okay, like Tanner, really good on base guy, really good to lead off an inning guy. We've put him in there before, and we needed 2 runs. So we tried to get somebody on base is essentially like that. Obviously Ethan, kind of when he plays or doesn't, or Jake or Josh, like it has to be looked at. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job to help the player be successful or the team be successful. And honestly, like this year, for 34 games, that's about as straight up as I've ever been, and it was great. Nobody liked that more than me. But at the same time, you had a couple of pretty good players sitting there not getting a lot of at-bats, going like, man, if we played them, this thing might not be that different, So I think it had more to do with the uniqueness of one pitcher in that game.
How was Larson? Leg injury? Or something?
He's better. Yeah, he had a quad thing. He was legging out a double. He's running at over 90% now, which is good. Because I think he's taking good at bats. When we've put him in there here recently, but he's back to. I mean, we haven't even talked about it this week, to be honest with you. I think maybe other than Monday, he said he ran and it was at 92%, and I don't know how they figure that out, but Chris Martin and Isaac do a good job with that. So I mean, from the health standpoint, obviously no injury. Other than that, we're in pretty good shape.
You may have just answered this with John's question, but do you ever fight that urge to plug and play kind of thing versus just let them go and see how it plays out?
Well, as far as
With the lineup and making in-game moves and like when or
yeah, well, the other day, like, I mean, Chase was throwing the ball well, so I left him in. Like, there was a spot where we easily could have gone to Connor earlier than we did. I didn't think they were seeing him, and then it got to the point, like with Lavalette, like Sorrell lined out to left and Cash hit one off the wall. And, obviously DJ and Cooper had struck him out, and then Connor came in and did exactly what we needed him to do. So much so he didn't hit it hard enough to where we could record the out. So yeah, but we let, and he deserved it, and he's throwing the ball really well right now. He had another good bullpen yesterday, but that was an example of we let him go until, Cash hit the ball off the wall, and somebody's going to pay Lavalette $6 million, and I decided to stick with what had worked against him so far between Cade, Cooper, and DJ.
You mentioned Chase. What is sort of do you think like the added velocity, getting up to 99, 100 almost every pitch when you're throwing that pitch, obviously, what has that sort of opened up for him, and how has this sort of simplifying this relief role helped him?
Probably a better question for him, because I saw a lot of 98. I don't know about 99s or 100s when he'd start, but I saw a lot of 98s. And when you get up to that high, it's like, is one more click, that much of a difference. I do think just there's an experience element of this thing, which, because he's been here for a few years, you kind of forget, like, it was only 18 innings coming into the season. And I think he's confident, maybe a tick more intent, knowing that, hey, man, I'm closing this inning every time I go out there. And if you're a starter, no matter how much myself or a pitching guy drives that into your head, like, hey, I want you to treat this inning like you're closing the game, it's hard to get that through when you may pitch 4, 5, or 6 innings. I think he's just been incredibly aggressive. I think the slider has been really good lately. And, I thought that was probably his best performance of the year, considering the environment, the competition the other day. So I feel like he's getting his legs underneath him and just at the right time.
When you mentioned that aggressiveness, was that part of the intent in putting him into a relief role to sort of tap into that more?
I like the thought of that. really probably just lining him up for his best success and our team up for their best success, and thus getting some of that out of him, and then him seeing what that does for him as a pitcher. Yes.
How's it been juggling this week with exams and preparing for Arkansas?
Yeah, we don't have academic problems at LSU baseball, so like it hasn't even really been a thing. We've actually exceeded in that part of the program probably better than any time historically, and there's all kinds of data on that. So I haven't since, and the thing with like finals week, it's like if you do your job all semester, like finals week's another week. Like that's how I wasn't a good enough student to do it that way myself, but that's what I tell the players. So I think that's been fine. The weather thing, so we had to bus to A&M, so we got home really late. Monday was going to be off regardless of the Tuesday game. Tuesday got rained out. We obviously had the pitchers throw. We had the position players lift. But I wanted to give the position players like another day of like total reset. And then yesterday it was good. I mean, we brought them in groups of 3. And so it helped them with their schedule a little bit. But we could be really pointed with what we were doing, mentally, physically, visually. And you got to be sharp, man, because against these types of teams, and this is another one, like you can be sharp, you can be on it. It's not going to guarantee success, but if you don't, you have no chance. And so I thought it was a good day yesterday. Today will be a good day. Get them back collectively a little bit, and then do some things that we need to do specifically for tomorrow to be successful.
You talked about Maverick earlier, and we're going to talk to Jay a little bit here. Just the strides.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always said this, like, and it's really hard in college baseball nowadays because, like, sometimes you have guys for a year, 2, in some cases, and a lot of my good, like Cade, won for 2 because he's one of the best pitchers in the country. Like, but development happens at different times, and guys they have my full permission to get better while they're here, and there is a method to that. And I'm very proud of Jaden. Again, came in, he got hurt at the absolute worst possible time he could, right before the season as a freshman. So that took 2 years of development off the board. In like to his question about Chase, I think he's partly getting better because he's getting more experience. And in Jaden's case, he has a real feel for pitching. Like, he has a real feel for pitching, and I feel like he's just needed time. And I feel like his last 3 performances have probably been his best. In that crazy 17-9 2 a.m. game against Mississippi State, it's like he's the only one that got in there and actually got those guys out. So I think he's done great. In terms of Rizzy, again, it's high school baseball in Massachusetts. I don't know what that looks like, but I won't ever be coaching or baseball or living in Massachusetts because I don't like bad weather. Sorry.
Coach.
Yeah. So you're going from that to, okay, hey, man, like jump in here and get Wyatt Hensler out, who's like 27 for Texas A&M, So, like, they need time to get that underneath them. And I think I've said this several times, like, Coach Yeski has done a really good job with these guys. And, they've done a really good job in using their experience as well. So now when you look at how you can shape up a weekend, when you look at Jaden throwing the ball as well as he is, Maverick throwing the ball as well as he is, Chase throwing the ball as well as he is, and this is what I meant, I think I said this to you on Sunday, is like that changes the dynamic of what this thing is. And then now I can go in these position player meetings and go like, hey, man, we're not talking about hanging the moon here being Dylan Cruz or Tommy White. We're talking about you being a little bit better. And if you do that with the way we've played defense, with the couple starters you asked me about, the ascension of the pen, now we're talking about really, really winning.
Your Honor, and seniors?
Time for the last one. It's the last one. Anyone else have anything else before Jacques goes? Okay, Jacques and then you guys.
You honor seniors Sunday?
Yes.
So only 4?
I think it's 5. And I'll just say this, like, I'm obviously very thankful for those guys. In terms of Josh, like, he's the only player that's been here for 4 years, and, he's the best, in terms of the other guys, Luis transferring here, who's the exact player in person this team needed and this program needed. at that position. Dalton, we talked about huge hit, maybe the hit of the year, honestly, to this point in time, to set the stage for Jared's homer. Cade Woods, hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities or pitched a lot, but been the ultimate team guy, loved by his teammates. There's one more. Who am I missing?
Braswell?
Braswell, thank you. Who came at a time when we really needed him. He went in the portal the day after we beat Kentucky in the Super Regional, and Jordan Thompson looked like Ozzie Smith, and it was it's great. We're going to Omaha. That's what my whole life's about, but I'm not sure there's a shortstop here that's going to show up next year because of who we were going to lose in the draft that can do this. And came in, did a great job. Was a big part of last year's team's ascent, to play well at the end of the season, and then has done a great job this year moving positions and is playing his best right now when we really need it. So I'm happy for those guys. What I was going to say, though, is I really believe we have so much in front of us. I'm not the great senior day coach because there's so much I believe that we still have ahead of us. But love those guys, and they've been a big part of this thing, all 5 of them.
All right, we'll wrap
Coach,
up. Last one.
Cade Anderson has talked about how much he loves LSU for so long. What does it mean to have a kid who loves the program as much as he does to be as successful as he is?
That's everything, and I really appreciate that question. I think, you have your best teams when your best players, and he's probably our best player if you really want to get down to it, that are the most bought into what you're doing, and then the whole other layer of, this is what he was going to do. When I was coming here, I knew how good he was, and it was literally the easiest phone call in the world, and going man, you can see why, Eric Borba, who's a good friend of mine, his son who plays at Texas was good friends with Cade, played on the same travel team, and he's hey man, you need to make sure this is dialed right now. And then I pulled up the internet, watched 5 minutes of videos, saw how he moved, and it's yeah, back to left-handed pitching. And then got on the phone with them, and then got to know him, and then saw how he handled Tommy John in high school. Came in really hard to succeed as a freshman in this thing. He did it, and then watched the growth of the development of the pitches, the development of his body, the mental game in season. He's been better the last 2 weeks, which is amazing. He's probably competing to be the national pitcher of the year. So you got all that, and then you got this dude that is whatever you need for us, I will do. On top of being, the best pitcher in the country, it's a lot like Paul, in that regard, which is awesome. Lucky me.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Thanks, Coach.
I will bring up Josh.